November 2010. Kapunda, a sleepy country street where doors were left unlocked. Morning light fell on neat lawns. Then silence was broken by a discovery that would not be easily forgotten. 3 members of a family were found lifeless inside their home. The scene was chaotic. The town stood stunned. And the most shocking detail, someone no one expected was tied to the crime. A local teenager. Who could turn from neighbor to suspect so quickly? What secret crossed the line into violence? Welcome to True Crime Vault. Subscribe, like, and ring the bell so you do not miss the dark truths behind real cases. Today, we reopen the file on the Rowe family case. In the tranquil, agricultural heartland of Kapunda, Australia, a close-knit community where the simple gesture of leaving doors unlocked symbolized trust and familiarity. A shattering tragedy unfolded on November 8, 2010. This former copper mining town, home to a population of approximately 3,000, was on the precipice of experiencing a horror that would forever stain its collective memory. At precisely 11 a.m., a local resident, casually strolling past a seemingly unremarkable house on Harriet Street, stumbled upon a scene so grotesque that it compelled them to make a frantic call to the authorities. The interior of the Rowe family home had become a tableau of unspeakable violence. The lifeless bodies of 16-year-old Chantal Rowe, her 45-year-old father, Andrew, and her 44-year-old mother, Rose, lay strewn within its walls. Each had been subjected to a horrifying and merciless attack, their bodies bearing the ghastly marks of extreme brutality. Blood, thick and crimson, was splattered everywhere, transforming the once welcoming abode into a macabre gallery of carnage. The couple's 24-year-old son, Christopher, was fortunately out of town, enjoying a visit with his fiancée and her family in distant Queensland, blissfully ignorant of the unspeakable nightmare that had engulfed his loved ones. The Rowe family, relatively recent arrivals to Harriet Street, had quickly woven themselves into the fabric of the community. Christopher fondly remembered his mother, Rose, as a vibrant and endlessly entertaining woman. "You could never be bored with her," he recalled. "She was so funny. She was the handyman around the house and would teach me to fix things." Andrew, he added, was equally industrious and extraordinarily generous with his time, always ready to lend a helping hand to anyone in need, embodying the true spirit of neighborly kindness. Chantal, the bright and vivacious teenager, possessed a remarkable gift for turning any situation into a light-hearted joke, making it difficult for her to be genuinely affected by the petty and thoughtless remarks of others. According to her closest friends, she was eagerly counting down the days to her 18th birthday, dreaming of exciting nights out and thrilling adventures with her older brother, who was already excitedly planning to teach her how to drive, a rite of passage she had long anticipated. As fragmented details of the horrific story began to circulate through the media, Christopher, still miles away in Queensland, inadvertently caught fleeting glimpses of his street on television. Overwhelmed with a rising tide of anxiety and dread, he frantically turned to Facebook, desperately seeking any information he could find. "Can someone let me know what's going on? That's my parents' street. My family lives on that street, and I can't get through to any of them," a well-meaning but tragically misinformed individual responded, attempting to assuage his fears and assuring him that everything was fine, and there was no reason to panic. Tragically, their attempt to be helpful was tragically misguided, as they had mistakenly checked on the wrong house. Christopher was soon to be confronted with a devastating truth that would shatter his world. As the community reeled from the shock and struggled to comprehend the senseless violence, everyone searched for answers, but a local reporter lamented the troubling lack of information being released by the police. It remained unclear whether they possessed concrete leads and were intentionally withholding details to protect the integrity of the investigation, or if they were simply as lost and bewildered as everyone else, groping in the dark for any semblance of understanding. Online tributes and memorials began to appear, offering heartfelt condolences and sharing cherished memories of the Rowe family. However, these digital spaces of remembrance were quickly and callously infiltrated by internet trolls, who posted vile and abusive messages, defacing treasured family photos with cruel and hateful imagery. The more people tried to defend the tributes and silence the trolls, the more relentless and vicious the attacks became, a common and disheartening phenomenon, all too familiar in the dark corners of the internet. Authorities faced mounting scrutiny from the media as the investigation dragged on, fueling public anxiety and frustration before they officially declared the incident A triple murder. A pronouncement that confirmed the community's worst fears. Precious time had been meticulously spent ruling out the possibility of a murder suicide, a process that, while necessary, added to the agonizing delay in pursuing potential leads. Detective Sergeant Moy, the lead investigator, explained, "It would be irresponsible of me to release to the public that there had been a triple murder in the house if it was later established that was not the case. This is not just one person to seize in the house, where the scene is limited to a restricted area and you can make a determination reasonably quickly. This was extremely complex." The detective continued, painting a grim and disturbing picture of the crime scene. The crime scene was confronting, and the viciousness and frankly total overkill was something that had taken everyone back. If you're inclined to watch horror movies, I don't think anything could repeat that scene in any manner. News reports echoed the horrifying details. South Australian police have launched a murder inquiry into the deaths of a 16-year-old girl and her parents. The family was discovered after a friend raised the alarm yesterday morning. More than 100 police and volunteers have been searching the town for clues. Markers were placed on what are believed to be bloodstains leading from the house. If anyone saw anyone with injuries to themselves or any bloodstained clothing, please contact police immediately. Law enforcement officials were not ruling out the possibility of multiple assailants and warned that the search for evidence could take days, even weeks. Given the scale and complexity of the crime scene, it was immediately apparent that the attacks had occurred throughout the entire house. From the second you opened the front door right the way to the back of the house, every wall, every floor, every room was covered in blood. The subsequent autopsies revealed the full and sickening extent of the violence. Chantel had been raped, stabbed at least 33 times, and disemboweled. Her injuries were described as barbaric and inhumane, a testament to the depravity of her attacker. Her torn and bloodied clothes had been removed and, at some point, she had been redressed. A detail that added another layer of disturbing complexity to the crime. Andrew was found in the kitchen, stabbed almost 30 times, likely while attempting to defend his family. Rose was discovered a few meters away, having suffered at least 50 stab wounds in 2 separate attacks. One, as she was desperately crawling on her hands and knees, trying to escape the horrific onslaught. At least one of the murder weapons had been taken from the family's own kitchen, a chilling reminder of the violation of their sanctuary. And fragments of knives were found lodged in Andrew and Rose's bodies, further underscoring the brutality of the attacks. All 3 victims had fought back valiantly, displaying incredible courage in the face of unimaginable terror. But they were ultimately no match for the ferocity of their attacker, as the killer, or killers, had clearly been in the house for a considerable amount of time, as evidenced by the areas where an attempt to clean up the carnage had been made, a futile effort to conceal the unspeakable acts that had transpired. Detective Sergeant Moy emphasized the anomaly of such a brutal and senseless crime in Kapunda, a town known for its peace and tranquility. Crime was generally a lot lower in Kapunda, and petty at most. The only big crime before this that he knew about was when someone set fire to Map the Miner, a 7-meter statue commemorating the Cornish mining history of the town. So, something of this level was unheard of. Veteran Major Crime Detective Grant Moy headed the investigation, his face etched with determination and grim resolve. The offender is still outstanding, and I would suggest the offender or offenders should be considered dangerous. He warned, urging residents to remain vigilant and report any suspicious activity. The search intensified, with more than 100 police and volunteers combing the town for any sign of a clue, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem. The only solid lead at this point was from a neighbor who reported hearing Rose scream for help 3 times just after 1:00 a.m. He also recalled hearing a thud, like someone falling to the floor, followed by Andrew shouting and then a chilling silence that spoke volumes about the horror that had unfolded. Police were also on the lookout for a Toyota Land Cruiser that had been seen parked outside the house, but it was too early to say if they were dealing with one killer or more, or how many murder weapons had been used, leaving investigators with a daunting puzzle to solve. Detectives knocked on doors at around 300 homes across 100 streets, meticulously gathering information and seeking any potential witnesses. Every park, forest, and even distant rubbish dumps were meticulously searched, leaving no stone unturned in the pursuit of justice. The police water operations unit was called in to search nearby borders of water, and the major crimes unit received almost 100 calls through Crime Stoppers, each one meticulously investigated. The investigation focused on the high probability that the killeress would have sustained injuries during the attacks, meaning that bloodied clothing or shoes might have been discarded somewhere, offering a crucial piece of evidence. Detectives hoped a resident might have seen someone exhibiting signs of being in a fight. a fleeting glimpse that could break the case wide open. But with 3 victims and the entire house saturated in evidence, separating what was already present from what was deposited during the crime, hairs, skin cells, blood, and saliva proved to be an immense challenge, a painstaking and meticulous process. Police efforts were focused not only on finding the killer, but also on reassuring the terrified locals, who were living in a state of constant fear and anxiety. Specialists painstakingly scoured the gruesome crime scene, collecting every trace of blood, saliva, and hair, a task that one officer described as a forensic version of looking for a needle in a haystack. "You're trying to find information that was deposited at the time of alleged events," an investigator explained, "and any room will have lots of different materials in there. Hairs that have been shed by lots of people, skin cells who've touched door handles, light switches, etc. So, there's a huge amount of biological material in any scene. The key is trying to find information that's pertinent to an alleged event." When asked what specific details investigators could determine from DNA, the investigator responded, "Well, actually, very little. A DNA profile in this country is 18 numbers, plus another code which tells you if male or female, and that 18 numbers you can't tell anything from. It has to be compared to a profile either on a database or from someone who has to give a sample for that purpose." The breakthrough came when investigators obtained a male DNA profile and fingerprints from the back of Chantel's bedroom door. These fingerprints seemed to indicate where the attack had originated, revealing a possible motive and identifying the initial target, Chantel. The evidence strongly suggested that the murder had been sexually motivated, a chilling revelation that added another layer of horror to the crime. Semen was found on Chantel's body, and the information was immediately uploaded to the national database, in the hope of finding a match. To the dismay of investigators, there was no match, a frustrating setback that threatened to derail the investigation. The investigation reverted to the arduous task of collecting swabs and fingerprints from locals, hoping that something would soon connect, a process that required patience, persistence, and unwavering dedication. While forensic scientists have produced a DNA profile, police went have a match and are now considering whether to conduct a mass DNA test of men in the town, a news report stated, highlighting the desperate measures being considered. In South Australia, police cannot make someone give a DNA sample, but already a number of people in Kapunda have volunteered to be tested to clear them from suspicion. I can't give you exact numbers at this time, but we are speaking to all the male youths that associated with the family. Police confirmed that the DNA profile taken from the house did not match any of the 500,000 profiles listed on the national database, a crushing blow to the investigation. Despite this setback, they were still considering mass DNA testing in the town, a controversial but potentially crucial step. In Kapunda, many men seemed receptive to the idea of voluntarily providing a DNA sample to assist the police and to exert pressure on others to do the same, demonstrating a strong sense of community and a desire to bring the killer to justice. "Yeah, I got no problems with it, I'll do it. I'm innocent. And yeah, if anyone else is innocent, then they'll do it," one resident stated, echoing the sentiment of many in the town. The DNA profiles provided would be checked for a match to the one found at the house, a painstaking process that held the key to unlocking the mystery. At the moment, this seemed to be the best chance of identifying who was responsible for the horrors that took place in a quiet street of an Australian country town, a beacon of hope in a sea of despair. Investigators learned that just days before the Rowe family was murdered, Chantel had hosted a small get-together at her house while her parents were away for the night. It was nothing wild or out of control, just some snacks, drinks, and movies, a typical gathering of teenagers. They tracked down everyone who had attended the gathering, and all were very open and helpful, eager to assist in any way they could. Chantel's boyfriend, Dylan, said that he had texted her at about 5:30 a.m. on the morning of the murders. She had been feeling unwell the day before, and he was checking in on her. He said he never received a reply, but Chantel's phone data revealed that a message had been sent back, a tantalizing clue that remained just out of reach. Police believed that her phone was out of credit, and the message was never recovered. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. All they could confirm was that a message had been sent from her phone. Chantal would have already been dead by this time, leading investigators to conclude that the message had been sent by her killer. A chilling realization that sent shivers down their spines. Good evening. Police are now probing the Rowe family background as they search for a motive for the stabbing murders at Kapunda, a news anchor reported, highlighting the shift in focus as investigators explored every possible angle. 3 days after the murders, a collection of flowers, teddy bears, letters, and photos grew larger by the hour. a makeshift memorial at the back gate of the Rowe family home, a testament to the love and affection the community felt for the victims. A steady stream of grief-stricken relatives and friends came to pay their respects, their faces etched with sorrow and disbelief. The community also held a candlelight vigil, a touching remembrance of the family, a symbol of unity in the face of tragedy. Chantel's boyfriend, Dylan, wrote on Facebook, "I hope you're watching over me now. Every time I see a picture or do something that reminds me of you, I can't help but cry." A heartbreaking expression of his grief and loss. Relatives rushed to support the surviving son, 25-year-old Christopher Rowe, who had returned to Kapunda, his world shattered beyond repair. He was in Queensland on holiday when his family's bodies were discovered, a trip that had unknowingly spared him from the horrific fate that had befallen his loved ones. The siblings were close and called each other their best friend, a bond that had been cruelly severed. Detectives said they were slowly piecing together what happened but still had no clear motive, a frustrating obstacle in their pursuit of justice. We could speculate on motives, and that's all it would be at this time. It's just too difficult to be specific in that regard. The town of Kapunda was swarming with police, searching from the air and pounding the pavement, desperate for a breakthrough that would bring closure to the community and justice for the Rowe family. Locals were on edge as the killer, or killers, remained at large, casting a long shadow of fear and uncertainty over the town. Dylan was ruled out as a suspect, as were her friends from the party, narrowing the field of potential suspects. However, one name kept surfacing: Jason Alexander Downey. He had not been at the party, but he definitely knew Chantel, adding another layer of intrigue to the investigation. Jason was 18 years old and had moved to Kapunda from Scotland. His stepfather was Australian, and he had arrived in Kapunda with his mother and brother from Scotland at the age of 14. He had attended the same high school as Chantel, knew her boyfriend Dylan, and had been in Chantel's circle for a while, making him a person of interest. During the initial interview with detectives, Jason immediately offered an alibi, even though no one had asked for one, a peculiar detail that raised suspicions. He also had some deep and painful-looking cuts on his palm, which he claimed came from falling off his bike, an explanation that seemed flimsy and unconvincing. On Jason's Bebo page, he stated that he was in a relationship, writing, "My name is Jason, and I have loads of nicknames like Scotty, Scott Bag, and Bagpipes. I grew up without a dad since I was 2 months old, so I've been raised up by my mum all my life. I respect and love her to death even though we have our bad moments. Love my family in Scotland. Haven't seen them for 6 years. Love you and hope to see you soon." Those who knew Jason described him as having few acquaintances, let alone real friends. And he was often labeled as weird and a loner, an outsider looking in. He would often exaggerate stories about himself, which alienated many and created a sense of distance. He worked as an apprentice mechanic, and his colleagues disliked him, further reinforcing his image as an outsider. Dylan, who was friendly with Jason and dating Chantel, said that he hadn't seen anything that would concern him. Never an angry outburst, never raised his voice or showed any signs of violent behavior. He was quiet, yes, but pretty easygoing, a description that seemed at odds with the horrific crimes that had been committed. Dylan was aware that Jason had a thing for Chantel, but he felt secure in their relationship and hadn't thought anything of it, dismissing it as harmless infatuation. But Jason's interest in Chantel soon became obsessive, consuming his thoughts and actions. He was constantly texting and calling her, often confiding in her about his insecurities and anxieties, seeking her attention and validation. Chantel would always answer the phone because she didn't want to be rude or cause any awkwardness between Dylan, Jason, and herself, displaying her characteristic kindness and consideration for others. As things became more uncomfortable, she started trying to distance herself, creating a barrier between them. When Chantel hosted the gathering at her house, she purposefully didn't invite Jason, sensing that his presence might create an awkward and uncomfortable atmosphere. When Dylan asked what was going on, she didn't say anything, not wanting to cause any friction between Jason and anyone else, prioritizing harmony and avoiding conflict. On the night that she and her parents were murdered, Dylan had spoken to Jason. He mentioned that Chantel had a cold and was going to call in sick to work the next day. He also added that he wouldn't be staying at her place that night, so Jason assumed that she was home alone, an assumption that would have devastating consequences. Jason was asked to provide a DNA sample and fingerprints, and within 2 days, the results came back. Everything was a match, confirming the investigators' worst fears. Jason told police that he and Chantel had had a consensual sexual relationship a few months prior to this, but there was no evidence to support this claim, and it was widely believed to be a fabrication. This also didn't account for the DNA found on her body. which pointed to a non-consensual act. He was placed under arrest, and a suppression order was issued to protect his identity, but the news spread like wildfire through the town. Despite the name suppression, people were already all over social media, connecting him to the murders, fueled by speculation and a thirst for justice. Jason's mother, Lorna, described her son as a happy-go-lucky boy and vowed to stand by him, clinging to the belief that he was innocent. Because of Jason's good nature, it's well out of character. At school and outside school, Jason never got into any fights or arguments with anyone and always respected the teachers. He never swore, hit, threatened, or raised his voice to myself or anyone, she insisted, struggling to reconcile the image of her son with the heinous crimes he was accused of committing. As detectives continued to build their case, the community came together to say goodbye to the Rowe family, united in grief and remembrance. Hundreds of people gathered for the funeral service, their hearts heavy with sorrow and disbelief. Chantel's godmother said, "We are all here today to say goodbye, but the question we have is, why? It makes no sense," a sentiment echoed by many who struggled to comprehend the senseless violence. Piecing everything together, investigators believed that Jason had broken into the house through the bathroom window, a theory supported by a footprint found inside, confirming their suspicions. Chantel was clearly his primary target, and he may have believed that she was home alone, at least without Dylan there, making her vulnerable and accessible. Jason's lawyer stated that his client did not remember everything that happened after he broke into the home, but he had apparently intended to confront Dylan, a claim that seemed increasingly implausible given the evidence. He did not go there, armed, and did not intend to use knives against them, a denial that was contradicted by the brutality of the attacks. He did not intend to commit a sexual assault, though he may have been intending to further a relationship with Chantal. His lawyer claimed a weak attempt to mitigate the severity of his actions. However, Jason had been told by Dylan himself that he was not going to be at the home that evening, undermining his claim of intending to confront him. And because the knives were taken from the kitchen, the murders did not seem to be premeditated, suggesting a spontaneous eruption of violence. But his obsession with Chantel was all-consuming, and he wanted something to happen between the pair of them, a desire that spiraled out of control. His intention was to make sexual advances towards her, a plan that quickly escalated into a horrific act of violence. Chantel was attacked first, sustaining multiple stab wounds across her whole body, a brutal and merciless assault. Jason then turned his attention to her parents, going back and forth between the three victims, each attack more savage than the last. At one point, Chantel, bleeding heavily, crawled under her bed, seeking refuge from the horror. But Jason dragged her out and stabbed her again, showing no mercy. He removed her clothes and redressed her, a disturbing detail that suggested a twisted and perverse ritual. She was raped as she lay bleeding to death, a final act of degradation and violence. As one victim lay bleeding and drifting in and out of consciousness, Jason would turn his attention to someone else, prolonging their suffering and maximizing the carnage. He attempted to clean up, especially around Andre's body, before fleeing and sleeping in his car, trying to distance himself from the horrific acts he had committed. He was back at work the next day as if nothing had happened, trying to maintain a facade of normalcy. But when he heard about what had happened on Harriet Street, he left work early, claiming grief, and took a couple of days off, drawing attention to himself. He was photographed partying at a work Christmas function, and a camera crew even captured him on film as he visited a memorial for the family, adding to the growing sense of unease and suspicion. He left a teddy bear for Chantel, along with a handwritten note that read, "To Chantel, may you always be remembered and never forgotten. You'll be missed by everyone," followed by his full name, "and to kiss us," a chilling display of arrogance and deception. When people learned that Jason was the killer, many were surprised, based off of his build alone. He was skinny and had always appeared quite weak, making it difficult to believe that he was capable of such brutality. The fact that he had it in him to do something like this on his own to three people was just not what people were expecting, shattering their preconceived notions. Exactly 1 year after the Rowe family was murdered, via a video link, Jason Downey pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder, finally accepting responsibility for his heinous crimes. He was cleared of the second charge of raping Chantel, a decision that sparked outrage and disbelief. But this was not the end of the story, as in early 2012, the Director of Public Prosecutions questioned the legitimacy of his guilty plea, casting a shadow of doubt over the entire proceedings. Good evening. A stunning twist in the savage triple murder of the Rowe family in Kapunda. Prosecutors casting doubts over Jason Downey's chilling admissions, based on conflicting statements from the teenager. They've taken the unusual step of asking him to re-enter his guilty plea, a news anchor reported, highlighting the unexpected turn of events. He had written letters to his mother in jail protesting his innocence, and these had come to light and needed to be looked at, raising serious concerns about the validity of his confession. The DPP had concerns that parts of his story had been inconsistent, and this made them question the legitimacy of his plea, prompting a re-evaluation of the case. Jason told his mom and brother that he had driven by Chantel's home and noticed blood on the walls, claiming he was not responsible for the murders. He ran inside to find Andrew and Rose dead, a scene that he described in graphic detail. Jason claimed, "I saw Chantel's feet under the bed. She was alive. I put her in bed. She had cuts everywhere. She said, 'Help,' and she died in my arms. I expletive up. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have rung the police." A story that was met with skepticism and disbelief. He identified the real killer as a man dressed in dark clothing with a green bag, offering a new and unsubstantiated theory. He said he had told the police this story because he was scared they would believe him, a weak excuse that failed to convince anyone. As the court was thrown into chaos, the police used this time to gather more evidence against him, determined to uncover the truth, and they succeeded. A USB that belonged to Chantel was found in Jason's bedroom, and her lanyard was also in his car, along with more bloodstains belonging to Rose and Andrew, damning evidence that solidified his guilt. In March 2012, at a Supreme Court hearing, Jason again confirmed his guilty plea, putting an end to the legal drama and bringing a sense of closure to the victims' families. He had spoken with a psychologist and said, "I couldn't believe that I'd done it myself. For months, I couldn't accept that I did it because it was that bad, and I didn't want to accept it. But unfortunately, I have to pay the consequences. Obviously, I've wrecked the families and friends and people's lives who were involved. If I could turn back time, I would. They've lost their lives due to my stupidity." A statement that was met with a mixture of relief and anger. When asked why he committed the murders, he said, "Pretty much jealousy. I thought we had something on. When I learned she was with Dylan, I wasn't happy. I pretty much got angry. Like I said to you before, I had nothing against the parents. Everyone's a victim. In this, close friends and family, my family, the community, everyone. The only one that is not a victim is me. I'm not a good person. Obviously, I got problems. The problems, I'm not too sure. I don't know. I always think about the day, of what happened, and the consequences. A chilling admission of guilt and remorse. Nearly 30 relatives of a family murdered at Kapunda will present victim impact statements at a Supreme Court hearing for the teenage killer, a news reporter announced, highlighting the emotional toll that tragedy had taken on the community. About 50 relatives and friends of the Rowe family showed up in support of Christopher Rowe, whose parents and sister were killed by Jason Downey, united in their grief and determination to see justice served. 19-year-old Downey pleaded guilty last month to 3 counts of murder, bringing an end to the long and arduous legal process. A full courtroom watched as his lawyer, Greg Mead, indicated that the defense wasn't likely to dispute any of the prosecution facts, signaling a swift and decisive conclusion to the case. "I'd like to do is thank the police for what they've done bringing this to a quick closure. Just like to thank the police. They've done a wonderful job. Wonderful people. They'll look after us. They've done a damn good job. Thank you," a family member said, expressing their gratitude to the law enforcement officials who had worked tirelessly to bring the killer to justice. Justice John Sulin stated that a voluminous amount of prosecution material had been provided to the court, the details of which were yet to be made public, promising further revelations. Prosecutor Carmen Mateo said that about 30 relatives wish to present victim impact statements during sentencing submissions next year, providing an opportunity for them to share the profound impact the murders had had on their lives. That's going to be a very emotional time for them. Indeed, when the submissions are made, some further details of the crime scene and what actually occurred will be revealed to them and also to the public. And I think that is going to be quite significant. I just don't think he showed no remorse for what he'd done, not a flicker of regret, leaving a Rowe family member bewildered. "I honestly don't know how he can sit there, stone-faced, and feel that way," they lamented. The court adjourned until February, when the date for sentencing submissions would be determined, a formality. In the face of such devastation, the psychologist's insights offered little comfort. He noted the common societal reflex to paint the perpetrator as a monster, a psychological aberration. The uncomfortable truth, the one society struggled to accept, was that an ordinary individual, someone indistinguishable from their neighbors, could commit such horrific acts. This realization raised the terrifying specter that violence might lie dormant within us all. Each day in court was an emotional battlefield. Tears flowed freely, and shouts of condemnation rained down on Jason, who remained impassive, whether appearing via video link or in person. Every piece of evidence presented during the sentencing, while crucial, was another agonizing twist of the knife. The sentence finally arrived, a minimum of 35 years behind bars for the young man responsible for one of South Australia's most brutal crimes. The judge rightly called the non-parole period truly horrific, and it stood as one of the longest ever imposed in the state. As the courtroom emptied, raw emotions erupted. "I hope he rots in hell," someone seethed, a sentiment echoing the fury of the crowd. "I don't give a damn what happens to him." For Christopher Rowe, the day offered a fragile semblance of closure, even as he confronted his family's killer, hopefully, for the last time, within those sterile courtroom walls. Overwhelmed by grief, the sole survivor of the Rowe family found himself unable to speak. A cousin stepped forward, his voice heavy with the family's profound disappointment. "I don't think he should ever get out," declared, his voice thick with emotion. 35 years is not justice. Sorry, the legal proceedings might be concluded, but for Christopher Rowe, genuine closure remained agonizingly out of reach. "I could start to focus my strength," he later reflected, "on keeping my mom, dad, and Chan's memories alive, and I can slowly try to find my own way to survive through this nightmare." Jane Stinson of 10 News, reporting live from the courthouse steps, confirmed the sentence: life in prison with a non-parole period of 35 years, a punishment of extraordinary length in South Australian legal annals. Further darkening this already tragic narrative, details emerged from a letter penned by the convicted man in the aftermath of the sentencing. First of all, he wrote, "I would like to apologize for my recent actions. On November 8, 2010, I've caused so much pain, not only in my own family, but many others. This whole situation is eating me alive. I had a career, car, friends, and most importantly, I had my family. Now, due to my actions, I have nothing. I have hurt a lot of people for what I've done. I know that no matter what sentence I may get, it will never be enough. As much as I hate to say it, I deserve everything that is going to happen to me. I want you to know that if I could turn back time and fix my wrongdoings, I would do it in an instant, but unfortunately, I can't. So, once again, I sincerely apologize for my actions. From the bottom of my heart, I'm truly sorry." Detective Superintendent Moy, however, greeted this display of remorse with skepticism, suggesting that the guilty plea was a calculated maneuver to mitigate the sentence, rather than a sincere expression of contrition. The specter of unanswered questions continued to haunt the proceedings, adding another layer of complexity. A persistent rumor resurfaced in the wake of the sentencing that Chantel was pregnant at the time of her death. Though initially dismissed by police and absent from official reports, including the autopsy, some articles stubbornly clung to the claim. Chief court reporter Shaw Fuster from Advertiser, who had meticulously covered the case, tracked down the reporter who had originally published the information. When questioned about the source and the rationale for including it, the reporter simply replied, "Oh, I thought it would be interesting." A chillingly callous attitude towards detail laden with such profound implications. Sean, grappling with the enormity of the crime, and the person who committed it, confessed his inability to categorize or comprehend the killer. "I can't put him in any category. I can't put him in a box." He admitted him. "I've had psychiatrists try to explain to me that he disconnected from reality and wasn't himself. But the moment he did that, I'm not particularly inclined to accept that explanation because it suggests that all of us have the ability to snap and do what he did. I think that speaks very poorly of us as a species if all of us have got a Jason Downey inside us." The case irrevocably scarred the small town, shattering its sense of safety and tranquility. Doors, once left unlocked, were now secured with bolts and chains, trust replaced by fear and suspicion. For the surviving family members, the pain remained a constant companion, an unwelcome guest at every table. Every Christmas, every birthday, every special occasion, and all the ordinary days in between were forever darkened by the shadow of loss. Christopher Rowe's words, raw with emotion, laid bare the heart of the matter. The meaning of justice is the quality of being just and fair, or the punishment being proportionate to the offense. Please explain to me the justice in this. The weight of his grief was palpable, almost tangible. We can close this chapter, and now we can start to focus our strength on keeping Mom, Dad, and Shah's memories alive. I can slowly try to find my own way to survive this. And now, to make this story accessible to a wider audience, these episodes are available in podcast form. You can find the link in our description box or by searching for the Truly Criminal podcast on your preferred podcast platform. In the quiet town of Kapunda, the Rowe family tragedy reminds us of something deeply human. Danger does not always come from the shadows. Sometimes it grows quietly in the mind of someone we know, someone who struggles in silence, someone whose emotions slip out of control. This case forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth that unchecked obsession, loneliness, and emotional instability can push an ordinary person toward irreversible harm. It is a reminder to pay attention to the people around us, to speak up when something feels wrong, and to reach out before a crisis turns into catastrophe. Justice may bring closure, but it cannot restore the moments stolen from a family or the peace taken from a community. What we can do is learn to stay aware, to protect one another, and to value every fragile moment of safety we often take for granted. If you found meaning in this case and want to continue exploring the hidden lessons behind true crime stories around the world, we invite you to support the channel. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the truth behind real investigations. And after this video, explore more cases on True Crime Vault. Every story holds a warning, and every warning may save a life.